Now, you heard Lieutenant Byrd describing chaos and crime, but judges all across the country are saying that the people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th aren't patriots, and they are not political prisoners. They are people who should be punished, but they think the sentences that are being handed down are far too lenient, Ameshia.
They are absolutely correct. What we saw January 6th was an insurrection. It was an act of domestic terrorism. It was an act of trying to overthrow a rightful transfer of power in our government. It was designed to basically thwart everything that we know and acknowledge about our nation's democracy. Lieutenant Byrd he is an American hero. He took an oath and he stood by it. Ashley Babbitt, she also took an oath. She was former military, and she decided that on that day she was going to be completely reckless and to basically try to overthrow our nation's government. And I think that what we see here in terms of the very lax court proceedings, the rulings that are coming out, and the sentences for these individuals who put it all on the line and were willing to not only attack, maim, but also try to murder, in many cases, those who are in elected positions in the House and the Senate, as well as the sitting vice president at that time, Mike Pence. These individuals deserved long sentences. These individuals deserve to be made an example of. And what we're seeing is basically a slap on the wrist. There are people who are caught with dime bags of marijuana that end up in prison longer than we're seeing these individuals. It is depressing. It is frustrating. It shows that January 6th to many was actually a joke. And in no way does this prevent any of these types of attacks from happening again.
Bofta, to you now. There is this caveat from the black perspective. Are we seeing another form of white privilege?
I think that we are in some regards, because if you think about it, if this were a group of Black Lives Matter protesters who stormed the Capitol, who then ended up facing sentencing, would the sentencing look different? Because we know that the judges are able to go above or below the guidelines, and we know that they don't have as much of checks and balances, right? They make their sentence, they can say what they will, they can talk about how this was not a form of patriotism, but at the end of the day, they can go above or below the guidelines. They can look at things. Did the person brag on social media? Does that mean that they maybe should get a higher sentence? All of those things. So I think when Black America, when we look at this and we look at the mob of people, we don't see Black and brown folks, and we see that they are getting away with this. We also know that the justice for the J6 rally is coming up late September, on September 18th, and the fact that folks would even think to plan this after the insurrection while it's still under investigation, I think this is a prime example of white privilege, to even go at it again, Del. The audacity to say that we are going to go ahead and protest the election results and go back in September after the insurrection. If the sentencing had been stricter, maybe we wouldn't see that rally coming up at the end of September.
Hey, John, Michael Byrd is another example of how the party that says it backs the blue betrays the blue. He is receiving death threats and is being accused of murder by the former president. My question of you is this: is he a hero or is he a murderer?
I think he did his job. And I think we should applaud him for doing his job. He's there to protect Congress, and, based upon his testimony, in similar situations, we've seen this before in the past and heard as much with regard to what the officer saw and how the officer interpreted certain actions at that time. And based upon what he said, there was an obvious threat, breaking of glass, people shouting all types of threats and all types of statements. And we have to analyze this through his eyes, what he saw and heard at the time, and he took the appropriate action. And anybody that has said and backed the blues, as you stated in the past, with regard to living in that moment, should give the same right to Byrd in this situation, when he stood up to defend those who actually uphold the laws and pass laws in our land. So, whether you want to call him a hero or whatever the case may be, he stood in the gap to do his job under threat and danger. Because we can't look at this after the fact. Oh, she was a military person. Oh, she didn't have a gun, or things of that nature. You have to look at it in the moment. And that's what he saw, and he took the appropriate action based upon how he interpreted it.